You've just been given the high risk label. Maybe it's because you're a mom of a certain age. Maybe you had a previous C-section. Maybe you have a chronic condition. Or maybe something came up in your pregnancy that is a little bit different from what they normally call a textbook normal healthy pregnancy, such as maybe your baby's too big. Maybe your baby's too small. Whatever it is, you've been given this label, and now they're telling you exactly what you need to do, which is possibly an induction, or you have to have a hospital birth now instead of the home birth that you were planning. You have to plan a C-section. You have to manage your birth in the hospital with the continuous fetal monitoring, all of these things. And you think that there's no other choice, because they're not giving you another choice. They're not giving you other options. They're saying, this is what your label is, and here are your options. But is that all there is? Well, today in the Empowered Birth series, I'm going to go deep into teaching you how to find your alternative options without asking your care provider. Because the truth is that true natural birth and natural birth perpetuated in the medical system is why a lot of C-sections and inductions happen that later on the moms find out were not actually necessary and could have been avoided. This is the Empowered Birth series where I go deep into everything you need to know to plan and get your empowered true natural birth. And if you've been following along with this series, then you know I've been going into the 26 things that you need to know if it's your first time planning a true natural birth. Last week, we talked about assessing risk. And this week, we're going to be talking about alternatives. If you've been learning a lot about birth advocacy, or maybe you just understand the brain model, then you know it stands for benefits, risks, alternatives, intuition, and now or nothing. But here's the problem with that. When you're looking at the benefits of the proposed treatment that your care provider is offering, and they only skirt around the issue of risks in terms of how risky it would be for you to not do this procedure based on the high risk label they gave you, you might not even see any alternatives, or those alternatives might just be the things that your care provider has pre-approved that seem worse than the proposed treatment. Such as they say, oh, well, we could induce you, or you can go straight to a C-section. We could induce you with Pitocin, or we could break your waters and use the Foley bulb. Whatever the option that they're giving you, often they're not giving you the final option of now or nothing, or finding your own alternative. And that is what the Empowered Birth method is really all about when it comes to becoming the birth consumer and planning and getting your empowered birth without having to fight, beg, or compromise. Now, I talk a little bit about this inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth, which you can kind of see behind me. And if you haven't read that book, or it's just been a while and you need a refresher, I just want to remind you it is available on Amazon. You can also listen to the entire thing through the Empowered Birth book playlist on my YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out, because here at Empowering Moms, information is free and you only pay for access to me. And the reason for that is simple. I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me or not, whether you buy any of my courses, and I believe that you deserve to have an empowered birth. It is your birthright. It is the most transformative experience that you could ever have as a mother, and it also ripples into other areas of your life. So when you're looking at the idea of risks and benefits, and then you're not considering your alternatives, or you're not sure what's out there, how do you figure out what else you could do? After all, if you go into the mom groups, often they're just following the same advice that their doctors tell them, and not everybody is brave enough or confident enough or aware enough that they need to speak up. Sometimes those moms don't even see those posts. And some moms are like, my thing is so out there, what I did, and it's not what the rest of the group would probably think is right. And if I say it, I'm now going to get swarmed. Go back and watch some of my other videos where I talk about how to find a supportive mom group and the pitfalls of the mom groups as well and how they undermine your confidence. Because the fact is that true natural birth, which is what your body is designed to do, it's the natural birth that you were probably looking at on Instagram or on any other social media channels. Maybe you read a beautiful, positive birth story. Maybe you just have this vision in your head of, I just want to be able to experience my hormones in my body and be able to just birth naturally. And maybe I'll call in medical intervention if it's needed, but I don't want that as the default. And there's also moms on the other side of that that are like, you know what? I'm terrified of natural birth. Natural birth, just everything goes wrong. All the stories I hear, they're all horror stories. I don't want this to happen to me. So I should probably just do this intervention. Now, whichever side you are on, or maybe you're in the middle and you understand the empowered birth method because you went to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide and you got the overview and you now understand the pitfalls of a first-time mom, a seasoned mom, and even a VBAC mom when it comes to getting a true natural birth or even just a natural birth and avoiding a C-section that they don't want. When you see that, you can't unsee it anymore. And you can recognize the dichotomy. Go back and check out some of my other videos that I've done where I talk about the things that you really need to know of how your flow gets interrupted by the medical system and by our birth culture, and basically understand how natural birth really works, because there's some misconceptions there. But of course, I don't have time to get into that. I just want to remind you, this is the free path. This is the do-it-yourself path. So as you're going through this, make sure you are also taking notes, okay? This is not a passive video. This is not one of those fluff pieces where I'm going to tell you a positive birth story and then end with, if you really want to know the good information, buy my course. I don't do that here at Empowering Moms. Instead, what I do is I give you the information, because if you only had enough money to spend on a doula or to invest in your home birth, maybe you're choosing to even get an Airbnb instead of going to your own home because you still need to be close to a hospital just in case. Whatever it is, I want you to take this information and use it as a supplement to anything else you're doing. Even with my clients, when they are hiring me as their coach, we are not overly focused on the birth education. They already have all the access to my program. If they need a little bit of a touch up on that, usually they come in and they already know my method. They've already read my book. They've already gone through the smaller course that I brought with the book. They've done their homework. And what I'm really focused on is showing them those alternatives that they can come up with themselves. So I'm going to teach you how to come up with those alternatives yourself. Because again, I don't work with everyone. My clients are usually paying me quite a bit to work with me because of that. And information is free. They only pay for access to me. They only pay for me to sit there and support them. And sometimes I'm the only one who's really understanding and holding their hand. The medical system is against them, or maybe it's their mother-in-law who's kind of causing issues. Maybe it's even their partner who kind of needs to be put onto team empowered birth instead of team I'm terrified and we should just do whatever the doctor tells us. But whatever it is, I'm focused on that. So if you do want my support, I just want to let you know there is some entry requirements for that. I don't work with everyone. You may just benefit from my self-study program where I do also do some laser coaching with you if you really need it. That is what you're actually paying for. And if you're just looking for information and you already have a doula and you already have a midwife or you already have a care provider that you trust, then let this information be a supplemental education for you so that you can have your empowered birth no matter what. Okay. And all I ask is that you pay it forward. Pass this on to other moms. Let them know that if they're looking for alternatives right now, this is the way to do it. Okay. So there are 3 different ways that you can find alternatives that are outside of typical mainstream where it's like, this is the only option. That's not true. There are always alternatives. There is the alternative to do nothing. There's also the alternative of like, I will do this, but I won't do that. So it's like, yes, no, counter offer. Remember those words. They're very important when it comes to setting boundaries and when it comes to asking for what you want and negotiating with other people. You can always choose, yes, I'm going to do it exactly the way that you're suggesting. No, that doesn't work for me at all. And counter offer, I'll do some of this, but I'd like to change something here. And make sure you also have your advocacy skills and have worked through your fears when you are doing that piece. If you do want more help on figuring out your alternatives and advocacy, I also have a decision-making workbook. You can contact us at hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com if you'd like to learn more about this decision-making workbook. It is fully editable. All you need to do is have a PDF editor, and then you can just write inside of the lines and come to your own conclusions about how you want to go about picking your alternatives. You work through your fears with this. You are also basically assessing the risks and benefits all through this workbook. And then finally coming to the conclusion of how you're going to present that to your team, your support team of your partner and your doula, or anybody else who's supporting you outside of the medical space. And then finally to advocate to your care provider specifically. So understanding that, we're now going to go into the actual framework of finding those alternatives. So number one on the best way to find these alternatives is to read birth stories. Oftentimes, this is what I really love about the mom groups, because moms will ask the question, how do I find something else to do? Do I have to do Pitocin, or do I have to have a C-section for insert thing that they're dealing with? Like sometimes a lot of moms, they're like, my doctor says I have to have a repeat C-section because I've already had one or more cesareans, but I really don't want that. And if you're in a mainstream group, there's going to be a lot of moms that say, well, it's dangerous to have a natural birth after so many C-sections because uterine rupture. And they may just be parroting back what their doctor told them because they didn't know their rights. If you want to actually know the evidence, you can go to vbacfacts.com. Jen Camel is excellent when it comes to breaking down those numbers. It's really not as high as the medical system would like you to believe. And the same thing goes for moms that are like over 35 and they're told that their only option is to go into labor before 39 weeks, or they have to have an induction because stillbirth rate goes up. And again, those numbers are not disclosed because if they were, a lot more moms would be saying no to that induction. So it's really helpful to look at those stories that go against what society has basically deemed to be normal. Those moms that maybe said, well, you know what? I am 39 and I had a home birth and I had 2 previous C-sections. And actually, I didn't do any of those tests that they said, and my baby turned out fine. You also want to be combating those stories and looking at the moms who might have had similar but did have something go wrong. You do want to pay attention to both of those sides. But what we do is we work through the fear and then we come to our own conclusion about what we're comfortable with in terms of risk. This isn't about, oh, there's another way, so I'll take that way. It's more looking at the birth story as a roadmap of, hey, wait a minute, I didn't know that that was possible. Like the story of my friend Claire Sherman, who runs Shine Space Parenting, and she ended up having a home birth with type 1 diabetes, and it was after a previous C-section. That story, if she hadn't known what Jenny had done, who's my friend and the one that is also inside Your Empowered Birth, she's also my partner. She's the one that said, Carly, how do I pay you and take your classes? When I was just helping out and giving information for free. And she had an unassisted hospital VBAC after a history of preeclampsia and chronic high blood pressure and gestational diabetes. So when she had that experience, This is when Claire was still working through her birth trauma. And Claire was thinking, I want to have another baby, but I don't want this recommended C-section. I want to find alternatives. Now, if she had gone into mainstream birth groups, she probably would not have gotten the help she needed. But fortunately, she found our community, and we have a lot of alternative birth stories. So there are more options because I've taught the empowered birth method to my community members, and I was teaching in the live streams for a while inside of the Facebook group. She was able to get that information, and that gave her the confidence when she got pregnant again to go with a midwife, not go with an OB, and choose to have a home birth, even though she now had had a previous C-section, and even though she had type 1 diabetes. She did it. You can go and check out that story inside of the Positive Birth Stories playlist if you want to know more about that. So when you understand that by hearing these positive birth stories that aren't just positive in the vein of, oh, I had this induction and everything went fine, or, oh, I had this C-section and it was actually a more positive experience, but instead seeing the story of like, yeah, they told me I had to do this, but I didn't. I chose my own path, and this is the result of it, and it was actually better than I thought it could be. That then leads to you thinking, oh, wait a minute, there's an alternative here. But you have to really be looking for those stories. And that is why, if you are having any trouble finding those stories, you can always reach out to us, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, even if you are a pioneer, even if this has never been done before. And that sometimes happens where a lot of my clients come to me with things like challenges that I've never taken on before. However, I've taken on something similar. And it's like, where can we go with this? How can we apply the empowered birth method to really find a new ground to track, to be able to cover that new ground, to be able to map it out so that in the future, it's an easier path for others to follow. And I mean, Jenny did this. It was groundbreaking what she did. And this is why we have that alternative, is because of those birth stories. So, of course, number one, you need to be looking at positive birth stories. Number two, I kind of already hinted at, because if you're looking at the positive birth stories, whether that is on social media, whether that is just by looking in a book or hearing it as word of mouth, there's also those mom groups. Mom groups are really good at telling you your alternatives, specifically if they are a good group to follow. Go back and watch my other videos where I talk about finding a proper mom group that's going to help you have a true natural birth. Because there's a lot of groups out there that quote natural birth, or they're pregnancy groups and they're all inclusive. And at the same time, they undermine your confidence. They don't really have positive birth stories to recommend them. And then you're looking at it as, well, wait a minute. Yeah, they had a natural birth, but it is not a true natural birth. It is natural birth that is basically the equivalent of the preservative-laden frozen dessert that you find at the convenience store, not the organic ice cream from the dairy farm. So understanding that there is a difference between the traumatic and painful natural births, where the moms usually get injured. They usually end up caving and getting the epidural, but they still had a vaginal birth. There's moms who tore very badly, and they're like, I don't understand. I mean, I tore very badly, and I kind of wish that I had done XYZ and I wouldn't have torn. And they aren't aware of physiological birth. So this is part of where the gap in the education lies. And this is also why I put my information out for free. Because if you don't understand how physiological birth actually works, the true natural birth, if you don't fully understand it, then you can't understand why the medical system doing the routine interventions is causing a lot of the problems. You just think, oh, it was natural birth. If you do not understand free birth communities, if you don't understand why they're choosing that, even if there are those horror stories, there are horror stories on both sides of the dichotomy. The only difference is that one is culturally sanctioned in the hospital, and we just say, well, things happen. The other one with free birth is that it is not culturally sanctioned, it is actually vilified. And even though that is the most natural of experiences, the mom is put in the place of being blamed for what happened instead of saying, well, some things happen. So if you understand both sides, and this is important, you understand both sides, you understand how natural birth actually works, how it's being sabotaged in the medical system. Sometimes the care providers themselves are aware of this and they can't do anything about it. So there's also a political dynamic here. And this all trickles down into the mom groups. So you need to be aware of that. Even when you're going and gathering up these alternatives, you need to be aware that a lot of these mom groups can have moms that are going to reinforce the typical alternatives, and they don't necessarily say the one that they did that was so outside of the box but worked for them. So you again want to be careful. If you're in a group and you're asking a question, make sure it's a diverse group. And again, check out some of my other videos to understand more about that. You can also just reach out again, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and either myself or someone on my team will direct you. Now, I'm just going to say that we usually get back to people within 3 to 5 business days, and we don't work on Fridays. So that's basically Monday through Thursday. You can expect to get a response from us. And if you've kind of caught us before our weekend, we may not get back to you until like Monday or Tuesday, as an example. Now, this is different if you are inside of our Empowered Birth community. So inside of our Empowered Mom and Empowered Birth community, this basically means you're subscribed to our newsletter. If that is the case, you do not write to hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Instead, what you do is you just hit reply to any one of our weekly newsletters. We give them out once a week. It's a deep dive into everything you need to know about that week's topic, and we go deeper than just birth. Because the power of empowered birth is not just giving birth to a healthy baby and having a happy pregnancy and not having that pain and intervention in your birth. It is what it gives you afterwards. Because when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power away from you ever again. In fact, this is also part of why I teach about looking for alternatives, because there's so many things that we're told as moms are options for us or not options for us, and how we need to do things in the world. But if you start to see that other moms are doing differently, other moms are thriving in ways that you didn't think were possible, and mom groups are, again, very good for this, then you see that there's a way out. Mom groups are incredibly supportive when they're the right group. And mom groups can also kind of tell you what's going on in a different area, because they tend to be international enough that you're able to see, oh, this practice that they're doing in my country is different from what they're doing over here. Well, how do I take this amazing thing that they're doing over here and bring that back to my country? How can we make more positive change into the world and basically take more agency and power back for our births? Because as mothers, we are also teaching and raising the next generation, right? So we want our children to have better lives than we even had growing up. And we want to make the world a better place. Otherwise, why would we bring kids into it? If we knew that the world was going to hell in a handbasket, why would we bring a child into that? But if we are thinking in the terms of, I want to have this child, I want to bring this child into the world, and this child is going to make the world a better place. And if we all do our part, we can all shift things around. That is a more powerful mindset to have, is it not? Exactly. And throughout history, this is what's been happening too. So before mom groups were available, we didn't know what our alternatives were. We only knew what was inside of our own little community, in our own little town. And the doctors could say, well, we don't support breech birth. Nobody will support breech birth. It's not done. It's not safe. But if you see that a mom in another city is having a breech vaginal birth, then suddenly you know that there's an alternative there. Maybe one that your care provider isn't aware of, or they are, but they want you to not be aware of it. When you see those alternatives, that's when it clicks in for you. And that is what I love about the mom groups, because it was able to give me more of an overview of what was happening outside of my own community to see that, wait a minute, we have a very, very high C-section rate for our area, and it doesn't really track with the data. And other people have even higher levels of high risk, and they're still having really good outcomes. So why isn't that being done here? And being able to bring those practices in to my clients and say, hey, actually, I know that your doctor's saying this, and I know that this is what the cultural normative is where you are, but somebody over in this country or just a couple of towns over did this, and here's this story. So I don't just pull from information that's like usual articles, how to have a natural birth, and I don't just pull from medical journals. I also like to hear those wild stories that come through the news feed, and they're like, mom had a baby on side of the road, or mom had twins and she had had a previous C-section and the babies were breech. Yes, this is an actual story. So understanding that mom groups are really good for that because they can share the resources back and forth. It's more powerful than just one or two stories because now you've also got the comments. I always encourage moms to not just ask a question, but to read other posts that other moms are writing and read the comments of those as well. And do it through the lens of power, not the lens of fear. Because if you're doing it through the seeking of validation for your own experience, you're going to be severely disappointed. But if you're doing it just to gather data, then it can be really helpful. And finally, the last one, number 3, is doulas and midwives. They are an excellent, excellent resource. And the beautiful part is that a lot of doulas are inside the mom groups. A lot of doulas love to share birth stories. It's like one of our favorite things to do because we wouldn't have gotten into doula work if we didn't love birth. I'm going to tell you a secret. Even though doulas seem to be kind of pricey in a lot of ways, we are usually doing this for a lot less than what we're really worth, what we could really charge. And a lot of us, we even take on clients that it's just because we have a passion, and we'll even basically give more than what they paid for in the package. So understanding that doulas are absolutely passionate about birth. We can also get really burnt out, and that is a whole other topic. And that is why the empowered birth method is so powerful, because that allows you to have a more collaborative relationship with your doula and hire the right doula for you. And then it also allows your doula to kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Because, I've talked to doulas over the years, and I started out as a birth advocate, and they said, I wish my client knew this. I wish my client had known this, but I don't have time to teach them. And that is why I say that information is free. You only pay for access to me, because if you have that information, you can then take it and use it during your pregnancy as you're working with your doula. And you'll have those pieces that your doula can't tell you or wishes they had time to tell you, but they really don't know how to go into it. Or maybe they aren't actually aware of it themselves. And then you can basically go from there. So again, with doulas, they know the alternatives. They also know when care providers are pulling the wool over your eyes. They also know all of the different variations of how birth can unfold. The more experienced a doula is, even if they didn't attend births themselves, but have a wider network of other doulas that they are in connection with, then they also are learning vicariously through those experiences. So a lot of the things that I've learned over the years, I picked up even from other doulas that I was in connection with who told me stories of what their clients did. And I paid attention to that and I kind of dissected it and filtered it through what I understand about birth myself and what I understood about psychology. And I'm like, oh, yeah, tell me more about that. Tell me more about the mindset that went into that one. Tell me more about this client. Like, you don't have to name names or any identifying things. Just tell me more about the actual process that they went through so that I can then bring this to my clients in the future and say, hey, this challenge came up. They did this. I don't know if it's going to work with your care provider. However, let's try it. Or let's see how that might play out. Let's do a role play here. Let's talk with your partner and figure that out. So when you're pulling from all of these different sources, you're basically pulling from positive birth stories, you're pulling from the mom groups, which is going to have more of a diverse environment, and you're also going with the right facilitators, doulas, who have a different take on the births that they attend than their clients would. Because if a mom is in a mom group and she's posting about her birth story, that's one thing. It's a completely different ball game when a doula is posting. It's even more powerful if it's a self-aware doula who is also aware of the system and recognizes all of the intricate details of the psychology. And when I'm going through and I'm reading these birth stories, I'm usually looking for, okay, somebody just said I had a traumatic birth. All right. Now let's see where the trauma actually is here. What happened? Where were the steps? And then usually within like 5 minutes or less, I can pinpoint exactly where it went wrong. And I'm like, oh, they did that. Oh, their doctor undermined them. Oh, their partner was not supportive. Oh, their doula wasn't as experienced as they thought. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, this sucks. This really sucks. I'm really feeling bad for her. Oh my gosh. Like, my heart goes out to her. And she has no idea. She has no idea. She's trying to say that even though all of this bad stuff happened, at least she has a healthy baby. She's trying to feel good about this. But I know that in a few weeks from now, when those hormones start to ebb off and it really sinks in, that's going to hit her hard. Because I know that because I had an experience where I thought that everything was okay. I mean, to the outside world, my birth was perfect. I didn't have an episiotomy. I didn't have an epidural. I didn't really have anybody touch me. And maybe I tore a little bit, but it didn't need stitches for it. It was fine. Except psychologically, I didn't have to tear. I was forced into tearing because they wouldn't give me the time to take to push. And when you recognize all of the different subtle nuances of how your power was stripped away from you and your alternatives were not given to you, you didn't have those options. You didn't recognize that you could create your own alternatives based on drawing on more stories and maybe outsourcing to mom groups and maybe talking to doulas and doing it through a lens of power instead of a lens of fear and doing it with the confidence to know you can say no and understanding physiological birth. When you don't do that, that is when things kind of, you're like, I just don't get it. I don't get why I'm so upset because to the outside world, I had a healthy baby. I didn't have it as bad as some people. Or it's like, I don't understand why I'm still traumatized. I mean, I should be okay with this. I mean, yeah, everything went and hit the fan, but that's just the way birth is sometimes, and I should just get over it. Why am I not over it? Recognizing it's because you didn't have those alternatives. You didn't know that they were available, or they were framed in a way that made them less appealing than what was being proposed. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe when you agreed to that counter offer that your obstetrician or even your midwife suggested, you didn't know all of the fallout that could happen from that. So by understanding your alternatives, you're going to have a more empowered experience because you're now making places from your own choices rather than having choices made for you. And then you basically agreeing with them and thinking that you had a say in those decisions, but really you didn't. Really you didn't, because there's a famous quote, and I forget exactly who said it. I know she was a famous birth worker or midwife or something, but I can't, it escapes me. But she said, if you don't know your options, you don't have any. And when I recognize that, it's like, yeah, I really didn't know that I had options. And a lot of my friends, when I first started out as a birth advocate, they didn't know their options either. Jenny didn't know her options until she worked with me and understood what had been really going on behind the scenes with her midwife and with the OBs and the way that the medical system worked and all of the little pieces that basically had said, she is a high risk mom and we're just going to give her what she needs to know on a need to know basis, and she needs to know nothing. And that is how they treated her. And that is why she ended up taking her power back in her second birth. And she had said to me, I will pay you all the money. And I'm like, I'm going to do you one better, Jenny. You're going to tell me what you want to know. We're going to run a couple of workshops together. We're going to run a group coaching program together. You're going to tell me everything. And then we're going to basically get other moms in. And that is what we did back in 2021. That is where we created the Empowered Birth Workshop, which is now your Empowered Birth Workshop. That is where I came up with the idea and concept of my book. We ran with it. And that is why today I'm putting that information out there because, again, those programs and being able to work with me one-to-one or in a group setting, it is not available for everyone. And I don't always run these classes and I don't always take on clients, but I don't want to leave you without support. And if you do want some coaching support, there are some groups that I know, and there are doulas out there that can help you. In fact, my dear friend Dawn Thompson runs Birthify, which is a birth and pregnancy coaching service. And if you want to know more about that, you can still reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and I will pass your information along. If Dawn has an opening, that's great for Birthify. If she doesn't, I can direct you somewhere else. And hey, maybe we do have some openings in our own coaching program, but I can't guarantee that when you're watching this video, that that's available. But information is always free and you only pay for access to me. So whether you're watching this in the spring of 2025 when I put this video out, or you're watching much later into the future and it's been a few years from now, I just want to remind you that where you want to go for the most relevant and updated information is to go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. And that will give you the overview of true natural birth and natural birth in the medical system, the pitfalls that you're falling into, all of the natural birth traps. I go into the resources that you would want to get. Basically, if you go through the overview of the guide, you're going to get everything that you need to know to start. And then if you want to click the links or go to any of the other resources, you can do that. It is always evolving. And we also have our Empowered Birth newsletter. We sometimes have our premium coaching, but the do-it-yourself path is always available for you. So if you did find value in this, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Pass this on, pay it forward to other moms, because as I said, I'm committed to you having an empowered birth. And when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power away from you ever again. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you took lots and lots of notes. If you do need to go back and take notes again, that's why these videos are available inside our playlist of the 26 things that you need to know. So make sure you go back and check out the other master classes if this is your first video or you need a refresher. And again, if you have any questions and you are not in the community, you just email hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And if you are in the Empowered Birth community already subscribed to the newsletter, you just hit reply to any one of our emails, and that will flag us to know, okay, this is a community member, because priority goes first to our coaching clients and our premium group coaching clients who get to talk to us on WhatsApp, either in a group or in a private chat, depending on where they are at in our coaching. And then we also have our self-study students who get support through email. They also get one laser coaching call with me or one of my team members to be able to go through their program after they've finished all their homework, to be able to pinpoint whatever they need help with. It is not a sales call. It is a real coaching call to help them, to support them, to give them that last piece that they might need. And then finally, we have our Empowered Birth community subscribers, the Empowered Mom community, where you get our weekly newsletter, which tells you everything you need to know to apply the Empowered Birth method, not just in your pregnancy and not just in your birth, but in your empowered motherhood journey. Because it is a ripple effect between the kind of birth experience that you are having all the way into how you see yourself, how you approach your life. And I want you to thrive in motherhood. I want you to thrive in every area of your life, from your relationships, your career, or even if you're running your own coaching practice or business, whatever you want to do, your creative life and creative expression, how you feel in your own body, and of course with your parenting. Because what I've discovered with the Empowered Birth method is that it is all encompassing. And I used it in so many other areas of my life, which you would read more about inside of the introduction to Your Empowered Birth. Just how powerful the 5 pillars of empowerment are and the Empowered Birth method. And as I said, if you hit reply to those emails as a community subscriber, you usually get support within 1 to 2 business days. So it's faster. Okay? So that is your path to Empowered Birth. Again, thank you so much for watching. Next week, we're going to finish off the birth advocacy component of this series by telling you the 3 ways to make your decisions, your final decisions for Empowered Birth, and do it confidently. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. Have a happy Empowered Birth journey, and I will talk to you soon. Namaste.